The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under the sodium glow of street lamps as I jimmied the back door lock with trembling fingers, my heart pounding like a war drum in the hollow of my chest. Desperation had driven me here, to this stranger's home on the outskirts of Capitol Hill, a place I'd scouted for weeks because the ads promised easy marks and forgotten valuables. But as the door creaked open, flooding the kitchen with the metallic tang of wet earth, I froze. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing from the hallway. Before I could bolt, a flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, pinning me like a moth to the wall. "Freeze!" came the voice, low, commanding, laced with an undercurrent of something raw and human that made my blood run cold. I raised my hands, the crowbar clattering to the tile floor, and that's when she stepped into the light. Officer Elena Reyes, her badge glinting like a false promise, her eyes, God, those eyes, dark pools of mahogany that held not just authority, but a storm of secrets begging to be unleashed. "Help me," she whispered, the words so soft they barely cut through the patter of rain on the window pane, her hand twitching toward her holster not in threat, but in plea. Time splintered in that instant. The world narrowed to the inch of space between us, her breath warm against my cheek, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and gun oil. I could have run, should have, but those eyes rooted me, pulling me into a depth I'd spent years fleeing in myself, a mirror to the loneliness I'd buried under layers of survival and stolen glances at women in crowded bars. "Please," she added, her voice cracking like thunder in the quiet, and in that fracture, I saw it, the flicker of terror behind her uniform's armor, the subtle tremor in her full lips that spoke of battles far bloodier than any I'd waged on these shadowed streets. She didn't cuff me. Instead, she grabbed my wrist, firm, electric, and yanked me toward the living room, her body brushing mine in a way that sent unwelcome sparks skittering up my spine. The house was a relic of faded prosperity, threadbare Persian rugs, walls lined with dusty bookshelves groaning under the weight of forgotten classics, and a fireplace mantel cluttered with silver-framed photos of a family that no longer fit her solitary silhouette. "They're coming," she hissed over her shoulder, her free hand fumbling with the blinds to seal out the night. "My ex, his crew. They think I have something they want. Evidence. If they find me here..." She trailed off, releasing me to pace like a caged panther, her boots thudding softly against the hardwood. I rubbed my wrist where her touch lingered, heat blooming under my skin despite the chill seeping through the cracks. Who was I to play hero? Parker Hale, 25 and adrift, orphaned young and scraping by on odd jobs that paid in cash and regret. My queerness a quiet rebellion I'd never voiced aloud in this city of rain and restraint. But her eyes, those damn eyes, held me captive, reflecting back a vulnerability that echoed my own hidden aches. "Tell me what's happening," I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt, stepping closer despite the rational scream in my head to flee. She stopped, turning to face me fully, her chest rising and falling in ragged rhythm. Up close, she was striking, olive skin flushed with adrenaline, high cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass, and those eyes, fringed with lashes that caught the dim lamplight like stars in a midnight sky. Early 30s, I guessed, but carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much, divorce papers still fresh in her posture, the subtle scar along her jaw a testament to streets meaner than mine. "I'm Elena," she said, as if names could bridge the chasm between thief and cop. "And you're?" "Parker," I replied, the words slipping out like a confession. She nodded, a ghost of a smile touching her lips, warm, almost tender, before the distant crunch of tires on gravel shattered the moment. Headlights swept the front yard like accusatory fingers, and she shoved me behind the couch, her body shielding mine in an instinct that felt both protective and profoundly intimate. We crouched there in the suffocating dark, her knee pressed against my thigh, the heat of her seeping through denim and duty as shadows elongated across the walls from the intruding beams. "Stay quiet," she breathed into my ear, her lips so near they grazed the shell, sending a shiver that had nothing to do with fear. My pulse thundered, not just from the danger, but from the proximity, the way her hand found mine in the gloom, fingers intertwining with a desperation that mirrored my own unspoken yearnings. I'd spent years dodging connections, loving from afar in stolen moments. The barista with the crooked grin who never noticed my lingering gaze, the co-worker whose laugh lit up the warehouse like fireworks. But Elena? She saw me, really saw me, in that heartbeat of shared peril, her thumb tracing a soothing circle on my knuckle that unlocked something fierce and fragile inside. Outside, engines growled to a halt, doors slamming like judgments, and low voices murmured threats that slithered through the cracks. Reyes, we know you're in there. Hand it over, or we burn this place down. Her grip tightened, nails digging crescents into my palm, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned closer, her forehead resting against my temple for a fleeting second, a silent anchor in the storm. The USB drive in the kitchen drawer. It's got recordings of their deals. Corruption in the department, my ex pulling strings from the inside. Her words tumbled out in a rush, hot against my skin, painting a picture of betrayal that twisted my gut. She'd been gathering evidence in secret, post-divorce from a man who dragged her into his web of lies, his jealousy festering into something violent when she finally walked away, taking not just her freedom, but the proof that could topple him. And now, here I was, an unwitting accomplice, my own petty crimes paling against this inferno. The front door rattled under a heavy fist, wood splintering faintly, and Elena surged to her feet, dragging me with her toward the back hall. We run. Together. You with me? Her eyes searched mine, not as cop to criminal, but woman to woman, a plea laced with the raw edge of trust I'd never earned. I nodded, heart slamming against my ribs, and we bolted. Through the kitchen, past the drawer I'd been about to rifle, out into the relentless downpour that soaked us in seconds. The rain was a veil, blurring our escape as we vaulted the backyard fence, her hand never leaving mine. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not for us. Not yet. But the night air crackled with pursuit, footsteps splashing through puddles behind. We darted into the alleyways of Capitol Hill, neon signs from dive bars flickering like false beacons, the city's pulse thrumming with indifferent energy. My lungs burned, legs protesting the sprint, but Elena pulled me onward, her strength unyielding, her laughter breathless, wild, bubbling up unexpectedly as we ducked into a shadowed doorway. You're fast for a sneak, she gasped, pressing against the brick wall beside me, our bodies flush in the narrow space, water dripping from her lashes onto my collarbone. I met her gaze, those eyes gleaming with a mix of adrenaline and something softer, deeper, a spark that ignited the dry tinder of my isolation. In that stolen breath, time bent, her fingers brushed a sodden strand from my forehead, lingering, and I didn't flinch. Couldn't, when every nerve sang at her touch. Why trust me? I whispered, voice hoarse from the run. She tilted her head, rain tracing rivulets down her neck, disappearing into the V of her shirt. Because in your eyes, Parker, I saw someone who's been running too. From the world. From herself. The words landed like grace, stripping me bare, and before I could deflect, her lips were on mine. Fierce, tentative, tasting of salt and storm. It was no gentle kiss. It was survival, a collision of two souls teetering on the edge, and in that moment, I wasn't the thief anymore. I was hers, found seen alive. We broke apart as shouts echoed closer, reality crashing back like waves on jagged rocks. This way, she urged, tugging me toward a side street lined with parked cars, their windshields fogged against the chill. We hot-wired a beat-up sedan, her skills surprising me, a relic from her undercover days, and peeled out, tires hydroplaning on the slick asphalt as the neighborhood shrank in the rearview. The radio crackled to life with dispatch chatter, her name bandied about in urgent tones. Officer Reyes, respond. Shots fired at 1423 Elm. Her jaw clenched, knuckles white on the wheel, But she didn't stop. Couldn't. Not with the USB burning a hole in her pocket, the weight of her choices pressing down. Where to? I asked, scanning the mirrors for tails, my hand instinctively covering hers on the gearshift. She glanced at me, that smile flickering again. Brave, broken, beautiful. Somewhere safe. My sister's cabin up in the Cascades. No one knows about it. The drive north was a blur of highway lights and heavy silence, broken only by the rhythmic swipe of wipers and the occasional brush of our shoulders. I stole glances at her profile, the way exhaustion etched faint lines around her mouth, and wondered how a single night could rewrite a lifetime. By dawn, we crested the foothills, the city a smudge on the horizon, replaced by towering pines that whispered secrets to the wind. The cabin was a weathered haven, cedar logs silvered by time, a stone chimney puffing lazy smoke from a fire she'd lit with practiced ease. Inside, it smelled of pine resin and old quilts, a far cry from the sterile apartments I'd crashed in. We stripped off our soaked clothes by the hearth, awkward at first, averted eyes giving way to lingering looks that spoke volumes. She handed me a flannel shirt, oversized and soft, her fingers grazing my arm in a touch that lingered like an echo. "You okay?" she asked, settling onto the rug with a mug of coffee, her legs tucked under her, vulnerability softening the lines of her frame. I nodded, joining her, the fire's warmth thawing the ice in my veins. "Never thought I'd be playing Bonnie to your Clyde," I joked, but my voice caught, the weight of it all pressing in. She laughed, a rich, throaty sound that wrapped around me like the blanket we shared, and set her mug aside, turning to face me fully. "It's more than that, Parker. You didn't have to stay. But you did." Her hand found mine again, deliberate this time, thumb tracing the calluses from years of manual labor and midnight heists. I swallowed hard, the confession bubbling up unbidden. I've been alone a long time, hiding who I am, from family that disowned me when I came out at 18, from jobs that chewed me up and spat me out. Stealing. It was control, you know? Something I could take when everything else was taken. Her eyes held mine, no judgment, only a mirror of understanding that cracked me open. I get it. My marriage was a cage, trying to be straight for my parents, for the badge. When I left him, it wasn't just divorce. It was rebirth. And now, this. She gestured vaguely at the drive in her pocket, but her gaze never wavered, pulling me into the gravity of her truth. The kiss that followed was slower, deliberate, an exploration born of firelight and fragile trust. Her lips were soft, insistent, tasting of coffee and courage, and as her hands framed my face, I let go, surrendering to the tide of her. We tumbled back onto the rug, bodies aligning in a dance of rediscovery, her curves pressing against mine with a hunger that matched my own. Fingers tangled in hair, breaths mingled in gasps, and for the first time, I felt whole, not in the rush of escape, but in the quiet surrender to her. Skin on skin, whispers of names like prayers. We mapped each other in the glow, her moans a symphony that drowned out the world's roar. Afterward, curled against her, her heartbeat a steady drum under my cheek, she murmured, "You're not alone anymore." And in the hush of that mountain morning, I believed her. But peace was fleeting. By midday, her phone buzzed, a burner she'd stashed, with a text that turned her blood to ice. "We know where you are. TikTok." Her ex, Victor, a crooked sergeant with ties to the mob, had eyes everywhere. Panic clawed at us, but so did resolve. We pored over the drive's files by the kitchen table, her laptop screen casting blue shadows on our faces. Audio clips of bribes, video of shakedowns, damning proof that could bury him, but only if we got it to internal affairs without getting buried first. "We drive to the station in Olympia tomorrow," she decided, voice steel despite the tremor in her hands. Anonymous drop. Clean. I nodded, but doubt gnawed. I was the wild card, a felon with a record that screamed liability. What if they trace me? She cupped my chin, tilting my face to hers, those eyes fierce with conviction. Then we fight.
Together.
That night, sleep evaded us, the cabin creaking under gusts that rattled the windows like warnings. We lay entwined, her head on my shoulder, fingers tracing lazy patterns on my stomach as stories spilled out, hers of a childhood in Tacoma's immigrant neighborhoods, dodging her father's expectations while dreaming of badges and justice, mine of foster homes in Portland, where love was a luxury I learned to steal in fleeting touches with girls who vanished like smoke. "I saw you that first night," she confessed softly, her breath warm on my neck. "Not as a thief, but as someone breaking free. Like me." Tears pricked my eyes unbidden, and I kissed her temple, tasting salt. "Your eyes, they're my compass now." Dawn brought resolve, but as we packed the truck, a distant engine rumble froze us. They were coming, early, relentless. We floored it down the winding dirt road, gravel spitting like gunfire, her hand clamped on mine over the console. The chase was chaos, black SUVs bursting from the tree-line, bullets pinging off the tailgate as we fishtailed onto the highway. "Hold on," she yelled, swerving into oncoming traffic, horns blaring in protest. My heart lodged in my throat, but adrenaline sharpened everything, her profile etched in determination, wind whipping through the cracked window, the USB clutched in my fist like a talisman. We lost them in a tunnel, emerging onto I-5 with sirens trailing distant wails. Olympia loomed, a beacon of fragile hope, but Victor's reach extended further than we knew. Roadblocks sprouted like weeds, forcing detours through backroads choked with logging trucks. Hours blurred into a gauntlet of near misses. A spike strip shredded our tire, sending us spinning into a ditch, where we hunkered in the underbrush, breaths ragged, bodies bruised but unbroken. She bandaged a gash on my arm with gentle hands, her touch a balm amid the blood and mud. "I love you," she whispered then, the words slipping out raw and real, her eyes shimmering with tears that mirrored the rain starting anew. I pulled her close, foreheads touching, our world reduced to this, two women forged in fire, loving fiercely against the odds. "I love you too," I echoed, the admission a vow, sealing us tighter than any chain. We flagged a passing semi, hitching to the outskirts, and slipped into the city under dusk's cover. Ghosts in hoodies and borrowed jackets, the station's lights a promise just out of reach. The drop was a suicide run. Elena's contact, a trusted captain, waited in a shadowed lot, but Victor's shadows lurked. We circled the block thrice, hearts hammering, before she kissed me hard. "If I don't come back, know you're my everything," and vanished into the night. Minutes stretched eternal. I paced the alley, every siren a spike to my soul, until she emerged, breathless, the captain's nod confirmation. But victory soured fast. Victor waited in ambush, gun drawn, his face twisted in betrayal snarl. "You think this ends me, Reyes? After all I gave." The standoff crackled, civilians scattering, and in the chaos, I lunged. Not for him, but for Elena, tackling her from the line of fire as shots rang out. Pain bloomed in my side, hot and blinding, but her arms caught me, dragging us behind a dumpster as reinforcements swarmed. Victor fell in the melee, cuffed and cursing, his empire crumbling in real-time broadcasts crackling over radios. Paramedics descended, Elena's face pale above me, her tears mixing with the blood on my shirt. "Stay with me, Parker. Please." Her voice anchored me through the haze, those eyes, my eyes, pulling me back from the brink. Surgery was a fog of beeps and morphine dreams. Waking to her vigil at my bedside, uniform traded for scrubs, her hand in mine like an unbreakable tether. Weeks blurred in recovery's rhythm, hospital greens fading to the cabin's warm woods, where she nursed me with soups simmered slow and stories spun soft. Victor's trial loomed, her testimony a gauntlet, but with each court date, she returned stronger, her love a shield against the slurs and stares from old colleagues questioning her distraction. I stood by her, literally, in the gallery, my hand in hers under the bench, a quiet declaration that rippled through the ranks, cracking open doors for others like us. My own reckoning came gentler. Charges dropped in exchange for testimony on unrelated burglaries, a plea deal that traded bars for community service at a youth shelter where I mentored kids adrift like I'd been, teaching them that survival could bloom into something sacred. One crisp autumn evening, as Seattle's leaves turned gold under a harvest moon, we stood on the cabin's porch, rings glinting on our fingers, simple bands etched with eyes that saved me. The world hadn't been easy. Prejudices lingered like fog, department politics simmered with resentment, but we'd carved our space, fierce, unyielding. "You saved me first," she murmured, pulling me close, her lips brushing mine in a kiss that tasted of forever. And in her eyes, I saw it all. The hook of that rainy night, the storm we'd weathered, the humanity we'd reclaimed. Love, it turned out, wasn't stolen. It was chosen, every day, in the quiet bravery of showing up. For her, for us, for the girl I'd been, finally free. The trial's gavel fell like a benediction. Victor's empire reduced to ashes in the courtroom's sterile air, his glare impotent against the justice we'd clawed from the jaws of his greed. Elena emerged from the courthouse steps into a blaze of flashing cameras, her posture unbowed, but I saw the toll in the faint shadows under her eyes, the nights she'd jolted awake from nightmares, whispering my name like a talisman against the dark. I waited at the curb in our borrowed truck, engine idling like a patient beast, and when she slid into the passenger seat, her hand found mine across the console, fingers lacing with the ease of habit turned ritual. "It's over," she breathed, the words heavy with finality, her head tipping back against the seat as if exhaling a decade's worth of poison. I squeezed her hand, the simple silver band cool against my skin, and pulled into traffic, the city's hum a soothing counterpoint to the chaos we'd left behind. We drove aimlessly at first, weaving through downtown's veins until the skyscrapers gave way to the waterfront's salty breeze, where ferries cut wakes like silver scars on Elliott Bay. Parking near Pike Place, we wandered the market's labyrinth, stalls overflowing with jewel-toned produce, the air thick with the tang of smoked salmon and fresh blooms. She bought me a bouquet of wild asters, their purple petals soft as her gaze when she tucked one behind my ear, her thumb lingering on my cheek. "For the girl who turned my storm into stars," she said, voice low amid the vendors' calls, and I laughed, pulling her into a shadowed alcove where the world blurred to just us, lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of salt spray and second chances. Strangers passed with indulgent smiles, a far cry from the whispers that had once chased us, but progress was patchwork. We'd learned to cherish the threads. Dinner was at a hole-in-the-wall taqueria her sister swore by, the kind of place where formica tables stuck to your elbows and the salsa burned holy fire down your throat. We split plates of carnitas and laughter, her stories of precinct pranks from her rookie days mingling with my tales of foster home escapades, the time I'd hot-wired a bike to chase fireflies at midnight. "You were always a force," she said, dipping a chip, her eyes crinkling at the corners in that way that undid me. Wild, untamed. I fell for that spark the moment you dropped that crowbar. Heat flushed my cheeks, not from the spice, but from the memory of our first night, raw, revelatory, her body a map I'd memorized in fevered touches. Under the table, her foot hooked around my ankle, a subtle anchor that grounded me in the now, where love wasn't a heist but a home. Back at the apartment we'd leased on Queen and Hill, a sunlit third-floor walk-up with views of the Sound, we shed the day's weight like overcoats. The space was ours, mismatched furniture scavenged from thrift shops, bookshelves sagging under Elena's thrillers and my dog-eared poetry, a gallery wall of Polaroids capturing stolen moments, us knee-deep in tide pools, her in a sundress laughing at my sandcastle fail. She drew the bath first, steam curling like invitations, eucalyptus oil scenting the air as she lit candles that danced shadows across the tiles. "Come here," she called, voice husky with promise, and I stripped, sliding into the tub behind her, my chest to her back, arms wrapping around her waist like vines claiming sunlight. Water lapped warm against our skin, her head lolling onto my shoulder as I soaked her shoulders, fingers tracing the constellation of freckles across her collarbone. "Tell me what you need," I murmured into her hair, the words of vow born of nights when words failed and bodies spoke. She sighed, deep and releasing, turning in my arms to straddle my lap, water sloshing gently.
You.
Always you. Our kiss deepened, slow and savoring, her hands cupping my face as if I were fragile, precious, the antithesis of the thief she'd first met. Tongues tangled, breath synced, and we moved together in the water's embrace, her hips rolling with a rhythm that built like a crescendo, gasps echoing off porcelain. Climax came in waves, crashing over us in shudders and soft cries, her nails raking my back in sweet possession. Afterward, we dried each other with terry cloth tenderness, her lips brushing scars, mine from the bullet, hers from a life of battles won and lost, reminders that beauty bloomed in the broken places. Sleep claimed us tangled in sheets that smelled of lavender and us, her leg thrown over mine, breath even against my neck. But dawn brought the first ripple, a call from the department, her promotion to detective dangling like bait, laced with the unspoken condition of discretion in her personal life. She hung up with a tight jaw, staring at the ceiling as rain pattered the window. They want me back in the field, but it's like walking a tightrope again. One slip, and they clip my wings. I propped on an elbow, tracing her brow. Then we make them wider, or we find a new sky. Her laugh was wry, but her eyes softened, pulling me down for a kiss that sealed our pact. No more hiding, not for badges or bloodlines. The weeks that followed were a delicate balance, her diving into case files by day, me volunteering at the shelter, teaching self-defense to teens who'd known too much loss. Evenings were sanctuary, cooking mishaps that ended in takeout and tickle fights, slow dances in the living room to Coltrane records she'd inherited from her abuela. One night, as snow dusted the city in rare winter hush, we bundled against the cold for a walk in Discovery Park, trails crunching under boots, the sound a black mirror reflecting stars. She stopped at the bluff's edge, wind whipping her scarf, and dropped to one knee, not with fanfare, but quiet certainty, a velvet box small in her palm. "Parker Hale, you crashed into my life like a comet, and I never want to look away. Marry me." Tears froze on my lashes, joy bursting like fireworks.
Yes.
1,000 times yes. The wedding was intimate, a spring affair in a meadow near the cabin. Wildflowers nodding approval, her sister officiating with tears and tequila toasts. I wore a simple white sundress that fluttered like freedom, she in a tailored suit that hugged her curves like sin, our vows exchanged under an arbor of woven vines, promises of fierce love, unyielding support, eyes that would always find home in each other. Guests were few, her family, warming slowly to the woman who'd mended their daughter's heart. My chosen kin from the shelter, kids who'd witnessed our story unfold like a fairy tale with grit. As we danced our first as wives, the sun dipping low, her whisper in my ear, "My eyes are yours forever," sealed the magic. But life, that stubborn architect, tested our foundation soon after. A case pulled her under. A string of assaults on queer youth in the Hill, shadows of Victor's lingering hate echoing in the brutality. Nights stretched long, her returning hollow-eyed, the badge's weight bowing her shoulders. I'd wait with tea and open arms, listening as she unpacked the horror, my own fears surfacing, of losing her to the job's maw, or worse, to the darkness it dredged. One midnight, after a raid that left her shaken, she collapsed into me on the couch, sobs racking her frame. "I can't save them all, Parker. What if I'm not enough?" I held her tighter, rocking gently. "You're enough for me. And that's the spark that saves the world, one light at a time." We channeled it outward, partnering with the shelter for workshops, her expertise in self-defense mingling with my stories of resilience, creating a program that bloomed into citywide ripples. Community healed us as much as we healed it. Potlucks where laughter drowned out, pride marches where we marched hand in hand, banners bold against blue skies. Intimacy deepened too, our love evolving from firestorm to steady flame. Lazy mornings with coffee and caresses, her fingers painting paths down my spine as sunlight slanted gold. Evenings where words wove tighter than limbs, dreams shared like secrets. A year in, the call came, a pregnancy, not ours by blood, but by choice. Fostering a teen girl, Mia, 16 and fierce, her eyes haunted by streets that had chewed her raw. Elena's hand trembled on the receiver, joy and terror mingling, but we dove in. Nights of awkward silences giving way to breakthroughs, Mia's guarded smiles cracking open like dawn. She saw us, truly. Two women building a family from fragments, love the mortar that held it fast. You're weird, she teased one dinner, fork spearing pasta. But the good kind. Like, you make it look possible. Elena's laugh rang true, her foot nudging mine under the table, eyes meeting in that silent language we'd perfected. Challenges lingered, department biases that clipped promotions, family holidays laced with pointed questions, but we faced them shoulder to shoulder, our bond a bulwark. Vacations became ritual, road trips to the Olympics, tent pitched under constellations, her body warm against mine as coyotes yipped lullabies. There, in the wild's embrace, we'd make love slow and sacred, her whispers of adoration etching deeper into my soul. 5 years on, as Mia headed to college, her cap tossed high, our tears proud rivers, we stood on the porch, Elena's arms around me from behind, chin on my shoulder. We did it, she murmured, breath stirring my hair. Built something real. I turned, cupping her face, those eyes still my undoing, deeper now, etched with laugh lines and love's patina. And it's just beginning. Our kiss was a promise renewed, the future unfolding like pages in a well-loved book, chapters of quiet triumphs, fierce passions, a legacy of love that whispered to the lost, you are seen, you are enough, you are home. Mia's departure left echoes in the apartment, her room a shrine of half-packed boxes and faded concert posters, the fridge bereft of her endless energy drinks. Elena and I navigated the quiet like explorers in uncharted fog, our routines reshuffling into something intimate and new. Mornings stretched languid, coffee brewing slow as we lingered in bed, her fingers tracing the curve of my hip while birdsong filtered through the blinds. What now? She'd ask sometimes, voice soft with wonder, as if the empty nest had unlocked a door we'd forgotten was there. I'd pull her closer, lips brushing her temple. Now we dream bigger. And we did, weekends plotting travels, her detective shifts easing into consultancies that led her home by dusk, my shelter work expanding into advocacy, speaking at city halls on youth protections. One crisp October eve, as leaves carpeted Queen Anne's streets in fiery drifts, we decided on a whim, a drive to the San Juan Islands, ferry slicing the strait like a promise. The cabin there was a rental, driftwood walls and sea glass windows, but it felt like ours from the first creak of floorboards. We unpacked with laughter, her tackling the kitchen while I strung fairy lights on the deck, the sounds waves a rhythmic underscore. Dinner was improvised, clams foraged from the beach, grilled with garlic and white wine, eaten cross-legged on a blanket as seals barked greetings from the rocks below. Remember our first escape? She asked, wineglass tilting in the twilight, her eyes reflecting the sunset's blaze. I nodded, heat pooling low at the memory, rain-drenched kisses, bodies colliding in desperate affirmation. How could I forget? You were my knight in Kevlar. She set her glass down, crawling across the blanket to straddle me, hands framing my face with that possessive tenderness that still unraveled me. And you were my thief of hearts. The kiss ignited slow, building like embers to flame, her tongue teasing mine as hands roamed, unbuttoning, unzipping, baring skin to the cooling air. We made love there under stars pricking the velvet sky, her body arching above me in silken rhythm, moans mingling with the tide's hush. Her fingers wove through mine, pinning my hands above my head as she claimed me. Deep, deliberate thrusts of hips that drew gasps from my throat, pleasure coiling tight until it shattered us both in shuddering release. Collapsed together, sweat-slick and sated, she traced my ribs with feather-light touches. I want more adventures with you. Babies, maybe. The kind we choose. The words hung, a seed planted in fertile ground. Back home, we dove into fostering again. This time, twins, boy and girl, for years old with wide eyes and wary hearts, plucked from a system that had failed them spectacularly. Luca and Sophia arrived in a whirlwind of sippy cups and bedtime stories, their laughter a balm to the quiet we'd mourned. Elena took to fatherhood-motherhood with fierce grace, her bedtime readings of dragon tales animated with voices that had the kids giggling into pillows. I handled the chaos of crafts and park outings, finger paints smearing our jeans like badges of belonging. Nights were stolen fragments. After tucking them in, we'd collapse onto the couch, her head in my lap as I combed fingers through her hair, whispering plans for family hikes or preschool fundraisers. But shadows crept. A case from her past resurfaced, Victor's cronies seeking revenge and anonymous threats scrawled on our door. Queer cops don't last. Elena's sleep fractured, her gun now bedside sentinel, and I'd wake to her pacing the kitchen, coffee cold in her mug. I won't let them touch us, she'd vow, pulling me into arms that trembled despite the steel. We'd counter with unity, therapy sessions where we unpacked fears, community rallies where our story fueled chants for reform. One brutal night, after a brick through the window shattered glass and illusions of safety, she broke, sobbing into my shoulder as sirens wailed. I'm scared, Parker, of losing this. You, come. I held her through the dawn, rocking like I did the kids. Then we armor up, with love, not fear. The department stepped up, finally, sensitivity training born of scandal, her promotion secured without strings, a quiet nod to the changes we'd championed. Threats ebbed, replaced by allies, a network of queer officers forming watch groups, potlucks turning into strategy sessions. With the twins settled, Luca's first steps toward us, Sophia's drawings of Mama P and Mama E taped to the fridge, we adopted them fully, court papers crisp as new vase. The ceremony was backyard simple. Cake smeared on chubby cheeks, Elena's tears as she signed, her eyes locking on mine across the picnic table, gratitude, love unbreakable. Parenting wove us tighter, its joys and juggernauts a forge for our bond. Sleepless nights with fevers became our duet, her brewing tea while I sang off-key lullabies, dawn breaking with exhausted grins. Dates were reclaimed creatively. Babysitters from the shelter network, evenings at jazz clubs where we'd sway in dim corners, her hand warm on the small of my back, whispers turning to heat that carried home. Sex evolved too, quicker, quieter amid the domestic hum, but no less profound. Stolen showers where water cascaded as her fingers delved, drawing moans muffled against collarbones. Lazy Sundays in bed, kids napping nearby, her mouth mapping my breasts with reverent hunger, building to peaks that left us boneless and bonded. Mia's visits were lifelines, college breaks filled with stories of activism, her helping with the twins like a big sister reborn. You too, she'd say, eyeing us over dinner. You're proof love wins the long game. And it did in Ripples, my book, a memoir of our hook, titled Eyes in the Storm, hitting shelves to quiet acclaim, readings where Elena sat front row, pride shining. Her own podcast launched, interviewing survivors of corruption, her voice a beacon for the marginalized. A decade in, as gray threaded our temples and the twins chased fireflies in the yard, we renewed vows on that same meadow, windswept, weathered, wondrous. To eyes that still save me, she toasted, glass clinking mine, her kiss a seal on eternity. In her gaze, I saw the arc, from desperation's whisper to this fullness, love not just enduring, but elevating, a testament to humanity's quiet revolutions, one heart, one home at a time. The twins' first school years dawned like a fresh chapter, backpacks slung over tiny shoulders as we walked the leaf-strewn path to the elementary gates, Elena's hand firm in mine, Luca chattering about recess superheroes while Sophia clutched a crayon drawing of our forever family. Dropping them off was a ritual of hugs and high-fives, her kissing their crowns with murmured, "Be brave, Ms. Amores," before turning to me, eyes misty but mischievous. "Empty house till 3. Whatever shall we do?" The walk home was foreplay, fingers brushing, sidelong glances loaded with intent, and by the time we crossed the threshold, clothes shed like inhibitions in the hallway, her pinning me against the door with a growl that vibrated through me. "Miss this," she breathed, hiking my leg around her waist, fingers slick and sure as they found my core, stroking until I arched, crying her name into the quiet. We collapsed laughing onto the rug, spent and sticky, her head pillowed on my thigh as sunlight slanted gold across us. "Think they'll notice if we nap here?" she quipped, tracing lazy hearts on my belly. But domesticity's pull was strong. Lesson plans for my advocacy workshops beckoned, her files on a cold case demanding attention. We rose reluctantly, showering together, soap-sudsed caresses turning playful, her nipping my earlobe with "later, wife," before parting for our days, kisses lingering at the door like lifelines. Challenges arose subtle at first. Luca's questions about why 2 moms, met with schoolyard taunts, Sophia's shy withdrawal after a classmate's weird family barb. Elena and I tag-teamed parent-teacher conferences where her badge lent weight, story times at home weaving our tale into normalcy. Love comes in all colors, like rainbows after storms. Therapy became family fare, circles on the living room floor where tears flowed and truths surfaced, binding us tighter. Mia mentored, her college essays on queer resilience inspired by us, summers home with internships at the shelter, bridging generations. Elena's work shifted seismic, heading a task force on LGBTQ+ hate crimes, her testimony before council sparking policy overhauls, funding for safe houses, training mandates that echoed our early fights. Late nights returned, but now with purpose. I'd leave dinners warming, slipping into her office to need shoulders knotted with stress, her sighs melting into moans as my hands wandered lower, unzipping tension along with trousers. "You're my secret weapon," she'd groan, spinning to pull me onto her lap, desk papers scattering as we fucked fierce and fast, her fingers curling inside me, thumbs circling my clit until stars burst behind my eyes, her release following in hot pulses against my palm. Public life bloomed bittersweet, a feature in The Stranger, our story headlined from shadows to spotlights, drawing letters from couples nationwide, thanks, questions, invitations to speak. We traveled sparingly, keynotes in Portland, a TEDx in San Francisco, leaving the kids with her sister, returning to their joyous pounces and whispered, "Did you miss us most?" Balance teetered, but love steadied. Anniversaries marked with private rituals, like the cabin weekends where we'd hike to our Whisper Rock, stripping bare to make love on mossy beds, her body a landscape I'd charred eternally, cries echoing to the pines. Then came the curve. Infertility whispers from friends turned to our own quiet yearnings for one more, a baby of our bodies, perhaps, through science's grace. Consults with specialists brought hope laced with hurdles, Elena's age edging the odds, my history of stress-fueled cycles, but we pursued IVF with dogged optimism, needles and appointments woven into carpools and bedtime routines. The first cycle failed, a quiet devastation met in each other's arms, her tears soaking my shirt as we curled on the bathroom floor. "We have enough," I soothed, though my heart ached empty. She nodded, fierce. "But if we want more, we try again." The second round took root, a pink line on the stick that buckled our knees in joyful sobs. Pregnancy wove wonder into weariness, Elena's belly swelling round, her glow radiant as she craved pickles at midnight, my hands splayed on the curve to feel kicks like Morse code promises. Luca and Sophia doted, drawing, baby-sibling cards, while Mia planned nurseries from afar. Showers of love poured, colleagues gifting onesies emblazoned with future detective, shelter families hosting potlucks where stories swapped like heirlooms. Labor came fierce under a full moon, Elena's hand crushing mine through contractions that bent her double, her curses a mix of Spanish fire and English grit. "You did this to me," she panted between pushes, half accusation, half awe, and I kissed her sweat-damp brow. "Worth every second." Our daughter, Isabella, arrived wailing at 3:17 a.m., tiny fists flailing, those eyes, a mirror of her mother's, deep and destined to save souls. The room filled with our family's hush, twins peeking wide-eyed, Mia snapping blurry photos, and in that sacred hush, Elena cradled her, tears tracing paths down her cheeks as she looked to me. We made a miracle. Motherhood quadrupled bloomed chaotic and profound, nights fragmented by feeds, days a blur of diapers and discovery, but joy threaded every seam. Isabella's first gummy smile aimed at Elena during a lullaby, the kids' chorus of sissy chants. We adapted, Elena scaling back to part-time, me weaving workshops around nap schedules, our love adapting too, sex snatched in whispers, her breastfeeding breasts tender under my lips, mutual pleasures gentle and giving, building to quiet crests that knit us anew. Milestones mounted. Isabella's christening a blend of traditions, rosary beads from Elena's abuela, rainbow banners from my chosen kin, vows renewed in her tiny gurgles. The twins' graduations followed, awkward teens blossoming into confident youngs, Mia's wedding a tear-streaked affair where she toasted, the moms who taught me love's a verb. Through it all, Elena's eyes held steady, my anchor, my flame, reminding that from a whispered plea in a stranger's kitchen, we'd built an empire of hearts. 20 years from that rainy night, as grandkids toddled underfoot, Luca's boy with his abuela's laugh, Sophia's girl with my green gaze, we sat on the cabin porch, swings creaking in breeze. Her hand in mine, silvered hair catching sunset, she leaned close. Still saving each other? I smiled, kissing her knuckles. Every day, amor. Every damn day. And in her eyes, the story looped eternal. A hook of help, a romance forged in fire, a humanity that whispered, love endures, because we choose it, fiercely, forever. Grandparenting snuck up like dawn's first blush, soft and insistent, transforming the cabin into a chaos of sippy cups and crayon murals on unexpected walls. Little Mateo, Luca's spitfire of a son, inherited Elena's unyielding spirit, toddling after her with demands for abuela stories, while Elena, ever the performer, spun tales of brave officers and sneaky heroes, with dramatic flourishes that left him wide-eyed and us stifling laughs. Lila, Sophia's daughter, was my shadow, cully-headed curiosity with questions that pierced like arrows. Mama P, why do you and abuela kiss like in movies? I'd scoop her up, nuzzling noses. Because love's the best story ever told. Elena would watch from the kitchen, eyes crinkling in that way that still quickened my pulse, mouthing sap, with a wink that promised payback later. The kids, Mia, Luca, Sophia, Isabella, had scattered to their orbits, Mia leading queer rights in D.C., Luca engineering bridges in Portland, Sophia teaching art in Tacoma, Isabella chasing forensics like her mama, interning at Elena's old precinct. Visits were feasts of reconnection, Thanksgivings where tables groaned under tamales and turkey, debates over politics dissolving into dance floors where Elena pulled me close, hips swaying to salsa beats, her breath hot on my neck. Dance with me like it's our first chase, she'd murmur, and we'd twirl, grandkids clapping, the years folding like accordion pleats to reveal the core unchanged. Elena's retirement loomed gentle, a badge laid down after 30 years of bending justice toward mercy, her task force legacy etched in statutes that protected thousands. The ceremony was understated, a backyard roast with colleagues past and present, toasts to the captain who queered the force, her speech humble. I didn't break barriers alone. Parker, My rock, my love, you showed me courage wears many faces. Tears flowed free, mine included, as she pinned her star on Isabella's collar, a passing torch that gleamed brighter for the handoff. Freedom unfurled luxuriant, mornings unhurried, coffee on the balcony overlooking the sound, her feet in my lap as we planned whims, a train trip across the Rockies, volunteering at the shelter where it all began. Intimacy reignited playful, her retirement gift, a weekend at a seaside B&B, where we'd lock the door and rediscover. Slow massages turning to urgent needs, her mouth devouring me with the hunger of youth, tongue flicking clit until I bucked, her name a chant, my turn strapping on, thrusting deep as she clawed sheets, cries peaking in symphony. Age had softened edges, but sharpened desires, our bodies maps of memory, stretch marks from babies, laugh lines from lives lived loud, each touch a celebration. Yet shadows lingered societal. National headlines of rollback rights, protests we'd join via Mia's streams, Elena's jaw set as she donated to funds, me penning op-eds that echoed our hook. We fought for this, she'd say, pacing, can't let it unravel. We'd channel it, mentoring young couples at community centers, sharing our story as shield. From a whisper in the dark to this light, hold on. Isabella's wedding brought catharsis, her bride a sharp-witted analyst with eyes like Elena's, vows exchanged under the same arbor, our toast, to eyes that see true, drawing cheers and tears. Health's whisper came subtle. Elena's annual check revealing a spot on her lung, small but stubborn, the biopsy's weight of vice on our hearts. We didn't crumble, doctor visits double-teamed, her hand in mine as results confirmed early, treatable. Chemo was a gauntlet, her hair falling like autumn leaves, but she faced it bald and bold, turbans traded for my kisses, grandkids drawing superhero hats with markers. I'd hold her through nausea nights, whispering, "You're my warrior," and she'd rally, eyes fierce. Remission rang like bells 6 months later, her first post-treatment hike a triumph, panting up the trail, collapsing into laughs at the summit, pulling me down for a kiss salty with sweat and survival. "We beat it," she gasped, forehead to mine. "Together always." The scare deepened gratitudes, letters to the kids chronicling our joys, a trust fund seeded for grandkids' dreams. Travels accelerated. Italy's canals where we'd gondola ride into sunsets, her hand sketching mine on cafe napkins. Japan's cherry blossoms, petals drifting like confetti as we temple hopped. Nights in ryokans where futons cradled slow loves, her fingers inside me under silk, gasps hushed by shoji screens. Home anchored. Holidays with full tables, Elena's tamales a tradition unbroken, stories looping back to that fateful night, and that's how Mama P saved Abuela's life. As 70 crept, bodies slowed but spirits soared. Volunteer trips to build homes in New Orleans, her hammer swinging with gusto, me mixing mortar beside. Arthritis nipped, but yoga mornings kept us limber, her downward dog a tease that led to mat-tangled trysts, laughter bubbling as joints protested but hearts raced. Mia's congressional run galvanized us. Campaign trails where we'd stump in swing states, our story a rallying cry for equality, crowds chanting "Love wins" under stadium lights. Elena's 80th dawned golden, a surprise party at the cabin with kin from coast to coast, balloons bobbing like memories. She blew candles with a wink. "Make a wish?" "Nah, I've got it all." And later, under stars, we slipped away to the hot tub, steam rising as she straddled me, water churning around us. "Still got fire, wife," she purred, grinding slow, my hands gripping her ass as pleasure built, cresting in waves that left us drifting, entwined. "Always," I whispered, her eyes, faded but fathomless, locking mine. The end tiptoed gentle, a fall, then diagnosis swift, heart-weary from decades of fierce beats. Hospice came home, the apartment a cocoon of quilts and quiet songs, family rotating vigils where stories flowed like rivers. I'd hold her hand, tracing veins mapped with our life, her voice a thread. You are my help, Parker. My everything. Her last breath was peace, eyes fluttering shut on mine, a smile lingering like afterglow. Grief hollowed, but love's echo filled. Memorials where hundreds shared how we'd touched them, a foundation in her name funding queer youth havens. I lived on. Grandkids my daily son, Mateo apprenticing as a cop, Lila penning poems of us, visits to the cabin where her journal lay open, eyes that saved me, gold-leafed eternal. Decades later, as I joined her under sodden Seattle skies, the circle closed, our story a whisper in winds, teaching that from a single, help me, humanity unfolds, love's quiet revolution, eyes eternally entwined. In the hush after Elena's passing, the apartment transformed into a gallery of ghosts, her coffee mug on the counter, eternally half full, the faint jasmine of her perfume clinging to scarves in the closet. Mornings were the hardest, waking to the cool side of the bed, my hand reaching instinctively for hers, finding only air thick with memory. But the kids rallied, a chorus of check-ins. Mia flying in weekly with DC takeout and policy rants, Luca tinkering with a creaky fridge like his abuela once had, Sophia filling walls with new art that blended our old Polaroids into vibrant collages. Isabella, now a lieutenant with her mother's fire, brought Lila and Mateo for Grandpa Parker nights, their energy a balm. Though the title chafed, I was Mama P, always, in the heart of it. I channeled the ache into legacy. Expanding the foundation, scholarships named Reyes Eyes for queer kids chasing justice degrees, readings from my memoir updated with our later chapters, grandkids, remissions, the fierce ordinary of long love. Speaking gigs multiplied, audiences leaning in as I recounted that hook. She whispered, help me, and in her eyes, I found my own. Q&As turned confessional, widows sharing their voids, young lovers seeking blueprints, and I'd advise, voice steady with Elena's echo. Love isn't possession. It's the courage to let it change you. Travel soloed bittersweet, retracing our Italy paths, Venice's bridges arching like her smile, where I'd sip espresso alone but feel her hand ghosting mine. Japan's blossoms fell unchanged, but I scattered petals at the temple, whispering vows renewed to the wind. Home drew me back, the shelter, now a Reyes Hale Center, buzzing with workshops where I'd guest teach resilience, teens' eyes mirroring my younger self's hunger. Miss Parker, how do you know it was real? One asked, and I smiled, Elena's gaze in my mind's eye. When it scares you as much as it saves you. Health's turn came mine, a hip replacement at 75, rehab a slog of walkers and ride jokes to the nurses. Blame the dancing. Elena never let me sit one out. The kids hovered, but independence won. I moved to a bungalow near the Sound, single-story ease with a garden where asters bloomed defiant, her favorites. Grandkids visited often, Mateo, fresh from the academy, pinning his first badge on my lapel with For the Original Hero, Lila publishing her debut poetry chapbook, dedicating it to the eyes that taught me to see. Remarriage whispers never took. Elena was my horizon, love's shape indelible. But companionship bloomed platonic, a book club of widows and widowers, evenings debating Austen with wine, laughter easing loneliness's edges. One, Tom from her old precinct, became confidant. Walks where we'd swap stories, his gruff, she'd have liked this bench, a nod to shared loss. Isabella's rise mirrored Elena's, captain by 40, heading diversity initiatives, her wedding band glinting as she swore in rookies with C with heart, act with honor. Family swelled. Luca's twins, Sophia's adoption of a son from foster care, Mia's partner birthing a daughter via surrogate. Holidays overflowed. The bungalow's table extended with leaves, tamales steaming beside my attempted pies, toasts to Abuela's table manners, drawing chuckles. Isabella's Isabella, named for the cycle, gurgled in my arms, her eyes a mahogany echo that stole breaths. Writing sustained, a sequel memoir, whispers echoed, chronicling the after, Grief's geography, love's persistence, serializing in the times to letters that flooded. Your story gave me strength to hold on. Awards followed, a quiet lifetime nod, accepted with "This is ours, Elena, yours and mine." 80 brought reflection, a road trip looping our haunts, Capitol Hill's alleys where it sparked, the cabin for solitary soaks, hot tub bubbling memories of her straddle, my hand slipping underwater to where she'd gasp. There, journal in lap, I penned final entries, eyes closed, but never blind, your light guides still. The end approached serene, heart fluttering irregular, doctors gentle with time to gather. The bungalow filled, kids, grands, great-grands peeking curious, bedside a vigil of songs and stories, Mia reading my vows aloud, tears salting pages. As dusk painted the sound lavender, I felt her, hand warm, eyes locking eternal. "Coming home," I whispered and slipped free, the hook complete, a life saved, loved, left luminous. Generations carried the flame, centers bearing our names, tales told at family firesides, and that's how great-great-mama P. met Abuela, with a whisper and a glance. Love's narrative, from desperation's dash to eternity's embrace, whispered on. See deeply, love boldly, live true, humanity's quietest, fiercest revolution. The Foundation's annual gala shimmered under chandeliers in the convention center's grand hall, a sea of tuxedos and gowns swirling to jazz riffs that evoked smoky lounges from Elena's stories. I stood at the podium, 78 and silver-crowned, voice carrying steady over the mic as I introduced the keynote. Isabella, her uniform crisp, eyes alight with that Reyes fire. She carries not just a badge, but a legacy of love that sees beyond shadows, I said, the room erupting in applause that warmed like her hand once had. Back at our table, Mia squeezed my arm. You killed it, Mama P, while Mateo, now a sergeant, leaned in with Abuela'd be proud, grinning ear to ear. Pride swelled, mingled with the ache that never fully dulled, her absence a companion now, familiar as breath. Post-gala, the family caravan to the cabin, a tradition unbroken, even as great-grandkids numbered 6, their chaos a joyful cacophony of tag and esmores. I claimed the porch swing, Lila beside me with her latest manuscript, pages whispering in the breeze as fireflies danced like escaped sparks. Read this bit, she urged, her voice a bridge to Elena's love of words, and as I did, poems of fractured lights mending, I felt her listening, approving from wherever souls linger. Night deepened, kids tucked in, and the adults gathered round the fire pit, guitars strumming folk tunes, stories looping. Luca recounting my hot-wiring escapades with exaggerated flair, Sophia mimicking Elena's salsa hips till we howled. Isabella raised a glass, to whispers that started wars of the heart, and we drank, stars winking complicit. Alone later, I wandered to the hot tub, steam curling like ghosts, slipping in with a sigh that released the day's weight. Memories surfaced unbidden, Elena's laugh echoing off pines, her body buoyant in the water, hands roaming with wicked intent. My own fingers traced old paths, dipping lower, circling with a gentleness born of years, pleasure building soft as nostalgia till a quiet peak washed over, tears mingling with splashes. Miss you, I murmured to the night, and the crickets chorused back, a lullaby of continuity. Morning brought blueberry pancakes, my recipe tweaked with Elena's cinnamon kick, served on the deck where grandkids vied for great-greats lap stories. I spun yarns of the sneaky night, sanitized for tiny ears, and the brave officer said, "Help." And the clever girls saved the day with smarts and heart, their eyes round, cheers erupting at the happily ever after. Mia captured it on video, for the family archive swelling with digital heirlooms, wedding dances, baby firsts, my 90th bash with cake fights. Advocacy evolved, virtual keynotes from the bungalow, my face on screens across campuses, voice cracking occasionally on eyes that change worlds. The foundation thrived, Reyes hail houses in 10 cities, safe harbors for queer youth fleeing storms like ours once was. Letters poured. A trans teen from Atlanta. Your book was my flashlight in Foster Dark. A couple from Boise. We said, I do, quoting your vows. Each a thread in the tapestry Elena and I wove. Humanity's weave of resilience. Health's ebb was graceful. A cane carved with grandkid initials. Physical therapy laughs over stubborn hips like abuelas. The kids adapted. Ramps installed by Luca's crew. Meals rotated, so I never cooked alone. Isabella's promotion to chief brought tears, her swearing in televised, me in the front row, pinning the star with trembling hands. For Mom, she whispered, hugging fierce, and the cameras caught it, a viral moment of Legacy's handoff. A fall at 81 sidelined me briefly, bruised ribs protesting every breath, but rehab was family affair, Mateo pushing my wheelchair with mock salutes, Lila reading bedside. Recovery gifted clarity, culling closets, donating Elena's uniforms to the precinct museum, keeping her journal close. Writing flowed freer, a collection of essays, echoes in the eyes, meditations on widowhood's wilds, love's long tale. Publishers clamored, launch party intimate at the center, toasts flowing as I read. She left, but never, her gaze my North Star, guiding me to share this light. Travel paired to nearby, ferry jaunts to Bainbridge, picnics where waves lapped like applause, great-grands building sandcastles echoing my old heists. One sunset, Mateo joined, his daughter on his knee. Gramps, tell the real story. How'd you meet Grams? I chuckled, Elena's wit in my tone. She caught me red-handed, whispered for help, and boom, lifelong adventure. His grin mirrored hers. Sounds like a movie. Better, I said. It was us. 90 loomed legendary. A surprise cruise up the inside passage, cabins booked for the clan, fjords framing toasts to the matriarch who hooked us all. Deckside, wind in my hair, Isabella's arm looped mine. You and Mom? Legends. We danced slow to the band swing, her leading gentle, laughter bubbling as I quipped. Save some moves for your old man. Nights, stateroom solitude brought dreams vivid. Elena's whisper calling, eyes inviting, and I'd wake smiling, hand over heart. The bungalow's garden flourished under Sophia's green thumb, Astor's defiant annuals. Evenings there, with Lila, we'd plot her next book, our sequel, she'd joke, pages turning like leaves. Health's final whisper came autumnal. Congestive heart, meds a bridge too short. The clan gathered seamless, bed a nest of pillows, air scented with soup and stories. Mia sang Coltrane soft. Luca fixed the window crank one last time. Isabella read case files aloud for laughs. Great-grands curled close, Lila's hand in mine as I whispered to the room. Tell Elena I'm coming. Got eyes on her soon. Breath eased final, pain absent, vision filled with their faces, love's constellation. And in the hush, I saw her. Waiting, eyes mahogany warm, hand outstretched. Help me home. I breathed and stepped free, the hook eternal, a life of whispers turned roars, love's gaze undimmed, humanity's tale, from one plea, a universe of hearts, beating on. Legacy's bloom post-me was vibrant, the clan stewards of our story, the foundation's Reyes Hail network spanning coasts, centers pulsing with programs, art therapies echoing Sophia's touch, justice clinics under Isabella's wing, storytelling circles where Mia facilitated whisper shares. Annual galas honored the hook, reenactments playful with actors in hoodies and uniforms, laughter rippling as they mouthed, "Help me," eyes locking dramatic. Profits funded expansions, a Seattle flagship with a wing named Parker's Perch, quiet rooms for reflection, walls etched with our vows. The kids chronicled, Isabella's memoir badge and heart, weaving precinct tales with our romance, bestseller that sparked docuseries bids, eyes across time, pitched as from 2025 shadows to timeless light. Luca engineered interactive exhibits for museums, holograms of Elena and me dancing, visitors gasping at the real-time kiss. Sophia's murals grace centers, vibrant scenes of two women hand-in-hand against storm clouds parting to rainbows. Lila's poetry evolved epic, gazes eternal, volumes tracing generations, readings drawing crowds who wept at lines. In her eyes, the thief found grace/whispers wove a world's embrace. Grandkids amplified. Mateo heading youth patrols, his beat the hill where it began, partnering with the Center for Safe Sneak Walks. Ironic nods to my past, kids giggling at Gramps the Ghost. Lila's daughter, a budding journalist, podcast family lore, Hail Ray as ours, episodes dissecting our hook with expert guests on queer history. Great-grands grew immersed. Isabella's namesake, a theater kid, staging whispered help school plays, casting moms as leads, applause thundering for curtain call bows. Family lore ritualized, cabin reunions yearly, hook night, around the fire, stories embellished, mores mandatory, journals passed for new entries. Mia's congressional legacy, equality bills stamped, inspired by moms, passed with fanfare, her retirement speech quoting me, "Love sees what laws miss." Sophia's gallery shows featured Elena series, portraits capturing her eyes in myriad moods, sales benefiting the cause. Challenges persisted societal, backslides in rights, protests where descendants marched, banners, eyes that endure. But our story armored them. A viral TikTok of great-grandkids lip-syncing our meet-cute, millions moved, donations surging. Centers became sanctuaries amid turmoil, counselors trained in Reyes resilience, modules on from help to hope. Centennials loomed for our era. 2125 marking the Whisper year. Festivals citywide, Seattle's parade with floats reenacting the chase, actors fleeing comically through confetti rain. A monument rose in Capitol Hill, bronze figures mid-embrace, plaque reading, "In eyes met in crisis, love remade the world." Dedication drew throngs, Isabella's great-grandchild unveiling, voice amplified. They taught us, one plea can spark eternity. The tale evolved oral to digital. VR experiences immersing users in our kitchen standoff, heartbeats sinking to the tension, whispers haptic. Books adapted graphic novels, anime series for global youth, themes universal, love's kinesis, humanity's bend toward light. Through it, Elena's eyes watched, in portraits, stories, the gaze of every descendant, mahogany depths echoing, see, save, love. From a thief's hook to legacy's loom, our whisper wove enduring, in every heart brave enough to ask, help, and every soul bold enough to answer with eyes wide open.